The Montana winter was relentless that year. The snow piled higher than the fences, and the cold seemed to creep into the bones of every living thing. The small ranch where young Sophia lived with her grandparents was swallowed beneath 3 feet of frozen weight, and March offered no mercy as it drifted slowly toward April. Sophia pressed her cheek against the frosted kitchen window, her breath clouding the glass in ghostly patterns as she peered into the pre-dawn dark. Her grandmother Emma was confined to the back room, weakened by fever and pneumonia that had left her struggling for every breath. The nearest hospital lay 40 miles away, yet their old truck sat useless in the driveway with a dead battery. Her grandfather Robert, once a strong Marine who had faced jungles and wars, poured coffee with hands that now trembled more from age than fear. At 73, he had faced things Sophia could not yet imagine. But that morning his eyes revealed a fear she had never seen before. He whispered that the storm would pass, that Emma would be all right. But even his words sounded thin in the silence. Sophia stayed at the window, a quiet dread creeping into her stomach. Something felt wrong beyond the cold, a tension in the air that pressed against her chest. The horses in the paddock shifted nervously, their cries sharp against the frozen wind. The old dog paced and whimpered at the door as though warning of danger unseen. Then the shadow appeared, moving between the trees with deliberate force. From a tree line rose a massive grizzly, taller than any man when it reared up. Its ribs showed through its coat. Hunger had hollowed its body and driven it down from the mountains. Its dark eyes glinted with desperation as it caught the scent of warmth and life inside the cabin. Sophia whispered to her grandfather, her small voice carrying the weight of fear. Robert came quickly to the window, and his face drained of color as he saw the beast drawing nearer. He told her to fetch his rifle. Yet as she hurried with the Winchester, she knew the truth. Her grandfather's hands shook too violently. His sight had dimmed with years, his body too unsteady for such a shot. The bear closed the distance, less than 400 yards now, its claws carving the snow as it moved with intent. Robert raised a rifle, but his finger hesitated against the trigger. The sight quivered. Sophia felt her heart pounding. The training he had given her years before returned in a rush. The calm breathing, the steady hands, the certainty that a single shot could mean survival or death. She extended her hands and asked for the rifle. Robert hesitated. In her eyes he saw not a child, but the echo of her father's steadiness and her mother's strength. In silence he placed the weapon in her hands. She raised it to the glass, aligning herself with the world outside. Wind from the northwest, 15 miles an hour, moving target for 100 yards. She measured everything in her head without words. Her breath slowed. Her heartbeat softened into rhythm. One shot, one chance to protect her family. When the rifle cracked, the sound tore through the quiet land. The bear collapsed into the snow. Silence followed, broken only by the wind's howl and the faint rasp of Emma coughing in the back room. Sophia lowered the weapon, her hands steady, her face calm. The impossible had been done. Years would pass, and that single shot would shape the path of her life. Sophia never forgot the look on her grandfather's face, pride tangled with grief, nor the weight of what she had done at 12 years old. It was the beginning of a journey no one could have predicted, a journey that would carry her from frozen fields to battlefields, from the quiet of Montana nights to the darkest corners of the world. 8 years later, Sophia carried that memory like a hidden scar. She worked long days and longer nights, waking before dawn for shifts at the diner, rushing through classes at the community college, laboring through evenings at the hardware store, all while caring for Emma, whose health never fully recovered from that cruel winter. Every dollar earned went to medicine and bills. Every dream of her own was set aside. When she entered the state shooting championship, it was not ambition that drove her, it was necessity. The prize money could pay for months of her grandmother's medication, yet she arrived with only a borrowed rifle, its worn stock and simple sights a poor match for the polished weapons carried in expensive cases by the other competitors. The wind swept across the range at 25 miles an hour, enough to scatter bullets off target. Sophia lay in the dirt, no mat beneath her, no spot at her side. Her hair whipped across her face, yet her breathing steadied. The rifle pressed in her shoulder as naturally as her own heartbeat. The first shot struck the center ring. The crowd murmured politely. The second followed, cutting into the first hole. By the fifth, silence spread across the line. The others had missed. The wind had humbled them. But Sophia's grouping was impossibly tight. Among the crowd stood Michael, a recruiter who had searched for exceptional shooters for years. He watched with narrowed eyes, every instinct telling him he had found something rare, something beyond talent. Sophia rose from the line and slung the borrowed rifle, ready to rush to her next job, unaware that her life had just shifted again, unaware that her path would soon leave Montana behind forever. The bus doors opened at Fort Benning, and heat wrapped around Sophia like a suffocating blanket. The Georgia summer pressed against her skin in a way that Montana winters never had. The air was thick with humidity and tension. 37 other recruits stumbled beside her, each carrying a duffel that held everything they owned. Drill sergeants descended like hawks, voices sharp and merciless, their words tearing through the heat like knives. Among them stood Sergeant Mills, towering above the line with the stance of a man carved from iron. He looked over the recruits with contempt that needed no explanation. When his gaze reached Sophia, he paused, his lips twisted into a sneer. He mocked her presence in front of everyone, his tone dripping with disdain as he suggested the army was no place for little girls. The recruits snickered. The message was clear. She did not belong. Sophia kept her eyes forward, her face a mask of calm. The ride from Montana had given her time to prepare, but no preparation could soften the storm that followed. Her bunk sabotaged nightly, her boots hidden, forcing her to run barefoot during morning drills. Trays of food spilled deliberately down her uniform in the dining hall. Whispers that she should quit before she embarrassed herself filled the barracks like smoke. She endured in silence. Every insult, tucked away like a stone, added to a growing wall within her. She remembered her grandfather's words that strength was not in the noise you made, but in the steadiness of your stance. So she carried the weight without tears, without anger shown. Her determination sharpened with each attempt to break her. Weapons training brought the first true test. Mills announced loudly that most women could not handle the recoil of a rifle, that they were too emotional, too weak, too distracted. Sophia accepted the issued M16, its balance unfamiliar compared to her grandfather's Winchester, but the fundamentals remained: breathe, steady sight, control pressure. The 300-yard targets shimmered in the heat, nearly invisible to recruits still learning the basics. But to Sophia, they were wide open. Her first shot tore through the center, her second nearly touched the first, her rhythm steady. By the 20th round, the other recruits had gathered behind the line in silence. Even Mills ceased his commentary, his eyes locked on the single ragged hole forming at the target center. The instructor called cease fire, retrieved the target, and held a high. 20 shots clustered as though a single round had been fired. Disbelief rippled through the ranks. Mills finally spoke, claiming it was luck, ordering her to repeat it. Sophia loaded a fresh magazine without hesitation, her voice calm as she asked how many times he wished her to prove herself. This time her grouping was even tighter, and Mills' eyes flickered with something unspoken. Perhaps respect, perhaps fear, but never again open mockery. Training pressed forward, days blurred into nights. Exhaustion and pressure molded them like steel under flame. Sophia's silence became her weapon. Where others cracked under insults, she grew sharper. Where others stumbled, she steadied. The memory of her grandmother's fragile health and the weight of bills kept her moving long after her body begged for rest. Then came the day that shifted everything again. A black sedan rolled through the gates, its presence stirring whispers. During morning formation, Mills dismissed the others, but held Sophia back. He ordered her to report to Building 4, a place spoken of only in hushed tones. The building was plain, yet the air inside felt heavy. The hallways swallowed sound, doors unmarked, light dim. She entered a room with a metal table and 2 chairs. Waiting for her was a man carved from years of unspoken service. His name was John, his rank high, but his uniform carried no patches, no ribbons, only a name tag that might as well have been fiction. He spoke with quiet authority, asked her about the grizzly. Her blood chilled. She had told no one in Georgia about that winter morning, yet here he was recounting in precise detail, for 100 yards, moving target, borrowed rifle, one shot, one kill. Sophia realized the choice before her was not about honesty to him, but honesty to herself. She admitted she never understood how she had made that shot, only that it had to be done. John studied her with eyes like stone, then slid a file across the table. It spoke of a program that did not exist, of candidates selected from every branch of training that erased names and identities. 37 had already been chosen. She was number 38. The washout rate was near total. Those who endured became something unspoken. Those who failed simply vanished. No record, no trace. Her thoughts raced to Emma's medicine, to the hours at the diner, to the life she carried alone. The path offered was dangerous beyond measure, yet it carried a weight of possibility she could not deny. When John asked if she would join, she did not sign a paper. She simply asked when the helicopter would leave. 2 hours later, she stepped onto a landing pad in a place that did not appear on maps. Mountains loomed high, the air thin enough to burn her lungs. Around her stood soldiers hardened by combat. Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Force Recon, Air Force Rescue. Warriors who had already earned their scars. She was the only one with barely 3 months in uniform. Their eyes measured her with disdain, some with hostility. Among them, a ranger named Michael made his opinion clear. He spat words that she would cost lives if she could not keep up. Sophia did not reply. Silence again her armor. She knew words could not change minds. Only time and proof could. Then the instructor appeared, a figure of shadows and scars. His name was Kane. He welcomed them to nowhere. He explained their families would believe they were dead. Their units would believe they had been transferred. And if they fell here, there would be no bodies sent home. Training began not tomorrow, but now. The days that followed were stripped of mercy. 20 hours blurred together, pain, exhaustion, and relentless evaluation pressed against every moment. Sophia discovered that her natural marksmanship was not enough. Here sniping demanded more. Mathematics she had never studied, camouflage that turned men into ghosts, conditioning that stripped identity away. She was remade piece by piece, part hunter, part machine, part mathematician, forced to calculate bullet drop across impossible distances, to endure hours motionless with insects crawling across her face. The body became a tool, the mind a weapon. Hesitation was death, and Kane made sure none forgot. Sophia learned quickly that the journey ahead was not about surviving winter storms or competitions. It was about becoming something unrecognizable. A shadow forged in silence, sharpened by discipline, waiting for the day the world would need her in ways she could not yet understand. The training stripped them bare until only instinct remained. Kane drove them through fire and exhaustion, through trials that pressed against the human spirit until it cracked. The candidates learned to move as shadows, to become silence, to breathe like the wind and strike like the storm. Sophia endured with steady resolve. Each moment of pain carved her sharper. Each test built her into something her old self would not recognize. One day, Kane led them into the clearing. In front of each stood a young deer trembling in the cold morning light. He placed knives in their hands and gave a single command: kill it, clean it, eat it. Hesitation meant failure. The deer's dark eyes reflected Sophia's own. She felt her chest tighten. Others moved swiftly without pause, blades flashing, blood soaking the earth. She trembled, but remembered what Robert once taught her. Sometimes survival demands cruelty. Sometimes mercy comes in. Swiftness. She completed the task with hands steady though her heart wept. Kane studied her and spoke that hesitation kills, that in the field hesitation cost the lives of teammates, of children, of innocence. Sophia met his gaze and promised she would not hesitate again. The weeks bled into months. Sophia became more than a marksman. She learned to read wind like a prophet, to hold still for endless hours until her pulse itself slowed to silence. She learned that sniping was not about the shot, but about becoming a living system where body, mind, and rifle moved as one. At last came the first mission. The aircraft roared across the night sky toward Afghanistan, its metal belly filled with tension and soldiers preparing for reality. Sophia checked her rifle again and again, every strap and every bullet. Her hands calm though her heart pounded. Michael, Now her team leader leaned close and reminded her that this was not the range, that here the targets fired back. The mission was to provide overwatch for the evacuation of a school. Whispers spoke of an imminent attack. 200 children were to be moved under threat of death. Sophia's team landed on a rooftop before dawn. She set her rifle, checked the scope, measured the wind. Below, the courtyard filled with frightened children, their voices thin against the morning air. For 2 hours, nothing happened. Tension hung heavy. Then Michael touched her shoulder and pointed. Movement on the rooftop across from the school. Sophia turned her scope, and her blood froze. 3 fighters setting up a machine gun, their weapon aimed at the courtyard below. Within moments, they could unleash slaughter. Sophia whispered her target call. Her finger pressed the trigger. She saw the face of the first man, barely more than a boy, his eyes fixed in concentration. She hesitated for a heartbeat, saw her own reflection in his young gaze. Then the sound of children carried up from the courtyard. The choice left no room for delay. Her shot cut through him. The second fell. The third turned to flee, but collapsed before he could take more than 2 steps. The courtyard remained calm, the children still unaware of death watching from above. Michael whispered that she had saved countless lives. But that night, Sophia bent behind her tent and emptied her stomach until nothing remained. She could not escape the truth. She had taken 3 lives in the span of 10 seconds. Weeks later, her face appeared in the hands of the enemy, a bounty posted across their networks. They called her the Shadow, the devil who killed from the dark. $50,000 for her head. The photo was from her high school, smiling in a graduation cap. Now painted with hate, Michael told her this meant she had joined the ranks of legends. But for Sophia, it meant only more danger. The danger arrived soon after. Her convoy moved through a valley when the earth erupted. The lead vehicle vanished in fire. Gunfire rained from the ridges above. An ambush. Her vehicle slammed into reverse, but another blast cut off retreat, pinned between explosions and high ground. Her team had no escape. Michael ordered her to reach a rocky outcrop 300 meters away, the only angle to turn the fight. But the ground was laced with mines. Sophia crawled, the air filled with the snap of bullets, each patch of disturbed earth a promise of death. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her mind. Patience keeps you alive. Rush, and you are prey. Inch by inch she moved, the fire around her deafening. A bullet struck close enough to throw dirt in her eyes. Still she crawled, slow and steady, until at last she reached the rock. Her rifle spoke then, methodical, precise, each shot cutting down the fighters who believed her trapped. One by one the ambushers fell. The shadow turned the hunters into hunted. Silence returned to the valley. But war held no mercy. Weeks later, she boarded a helicopter bound for a mountain operation. The craft struck a ridge in the night, blades shattering, metal screaming. Sophia awoke hanging upside down. The wreckage scattered, the pilot dead, others broken, the radio destroyed. She alone could move. She gathered what little remained, her rifle, her water, her will, and stepped into the most hostile mountains on earth. Days turned into a nightmare. She drank from streams that might poison her, ate insects when hunger tore her stomach. Infection spread through her arm. Her body weakened, but her spirit clung to survival. Then she found the cave, a Taliban cache hidden in the rock. She watched it for hours, memorized the guards' rhythm, and slipped inside during their absence. Inside, she found more than supplies. She found documents that revealed a planned attack on a forward base, hundreds of fighters preparing. And in those same papers, the location of a gathering, high-value commanders meeting in the mountains. Alone, injured, starving, Sophia faced a choice: escape with her life or stay and stop a massacre. She chose to stay. She chose to fight, for somewhere within her the shadow was not only about taking lives, it was about protecting countless more. The night in the mountains pressed heavy as Sophia lay hidden in the rocks, her rifle steady against the earth. She had relayed the intelligence through a damaged radio she salvaged from the cave. Her message carried the weight of life or death: an imminent attack on a forward base, and a meeting of high commanders, including the man who orchestrated chaos across the provinces. Command confirmed that she was the only asset close enough. No air support, no reinforcements, no rescue. She alone would decide the outcome. The compound sat 7 miles away across a valley filled with unpredictable winds and shifting pressure. A shot that stretched beyond reason, a shot that demanded perfection. Sophia studied the figures moving like insects in the compound, her scope tracing the bearded man in the white turban, Khalil Hakim, the commander responsible for countless deaths. She tracked the winds, the currents swirling through the valley, waited for the pattern, her body quieted into the rhythm her grandfather had taught her. Breathe slow, heart steady. She calculated every variable in silence: elevation, pressure, temperature, even the pull of the Earth's rotation. Her finger pressed gently. The rifle bucked. The bullet began its journey of 3 long seconds through the shifting air, across impossible distance, through chaos toward destiny. The white turban toppled. The compound erupted, commanders scattering in panic. The structure of their control shattered by one impossible shot. The mission succeeded, but the war did not relent. Months later, her convoy struck an IED buried beneath rubble. The explosion hurled their armored vehicle like a toy. She awoke in a hospital far from the battlefield, wrapped in bandages, her vision blurred, sounds distorted as though she were underwater. The doctor, a woman named Sarah, told her the truth: traumatic brain injury, damage to the optic nerve, hearing loss. Her sniper career ended. Sophia stared at the ceiling tiles, counting them as though order could hold back despair. Everything she had become, everything she had sacrificed, gone in a single flash of fire. Yet when she asked for a rifle, the doctors tried to deny her. She insisted. 3 days later, she sat at a range, her body frail, her sight blurred, the target a distant shadow she could barely distinguish. Her first shots missed, her hands shook, tears streaked her face. The person she once was felt dead, but then she remembered Robert's words. It is not about the shot you miss. It is about the one you take next. She adjusted, compensated, fired again. This time the bullet struck, not perfect, but true. Rehabilitation became her new battlefield. Walter Reed's sterile halls became her trenches. Therapists guided her through exercises meant to accept limitations, to adapt. Yet Sophia refused to be defined by brokenness. In the basement, she found an abandoned room, transformed it into her own training ground, lifting improvised weights, dry firing at mirrors, retraining her body and mind. She taught herself to shoot with one eye, compensating for lost depth, learning to focus with sharpened peripheral awareness. Her damaged hearing became an asset, filtering distractions, sharpening her concentration. When doctors warned that her efforts were reckless, she answered that she was already permanently damaged. The question was whether she surrendered or overcame. After months, she sought out John, the same officer who had recruited her. He met her with solemn eyes, told her the truth. The Army had no place for a disabled sniper. She challenged him to test her. The same course as any other. If she failed, she would walk away quietly. If she passed, he would reinstate her. 3 weeks later, she stood on the line at Quantico. Whispers rippled through the crowd. The broken soldier who dared believe she could still shoot. The first target at 600 yards shimmered in the heat. Her vision blurred, yet she steadied, breathed, and fired. The bullet struck the center. The second target at 800 yards fell the same. The final target at 1,000 yards tested every ounce of focus she possessed. Her shot landed nearly perfect. The range officer measured, called out expert marksman. The gallery silent in disbelief. John approached her, eyes questioning. How? He asked. She smiled, the first true smile since the explosion. She answered that she had simply learned to see differently. Soon after, she was assigned to a new team, not among recruits now, but among Navy SEALs preparing for a mission in Syria. She entered the briefing room where 6 men sat, their faces weathered by years of combat. Their commander, David Morrison, studied her with clear disdain. He dismissed her presence, called her a project unfit for such stakes. Sophia listened in silence until his contempt became too much. Then she rose, her dark eyes locked on his, her voice low but unyielding. She told him he would not be babysitting her. She would be keeping him alive. Morrison mocked her further, asking how a half-blind sniper planned to protect anyone. Sophia smiled coldly, not warmth but the same grin that had haunted enemies. She said she would do what she always had, make the shots others thought impossible. The room quieted. The SEALs watched with interest. Morrison studied her again, suspicion tempered by something else, perhaps curiosity, perhaps doubt too heavy to ignore. Sophia laid out the compound they faced, the guards, the rotations, the window of opportunity, her voice steady with knowledge earned from years of patience and blood. Morrison fell silent, his arrogance dented by the calm certainty in her tone. The desert awaited them, the compound squatting like a tumor on the horizon. Sophia lay prone, her rifle steady, her eyes sweeping the target. Morrison's voice crackled through the earpiece, asking about external threats. She counted 6 guards, each positioned to make entry impossible. She told him she would neutralize them. Morrison protested that it was impossible, 6 shots in less than 10 seconds. Sophia answered only with silence and preparation. The guards moved in patterns she had memorized, their routines like clockwork. She waited, counted, tracked. At the perfect moment she fired, 6 shots in 7 seconds. Each target collapsed. The compound fell silent. Morrison whispered disbelief. Yet his team advanced unchallenged. When dawn broke, the hostages emerged alive, 12 Americans freed without loss. Sophia packed her rifle, her body heavy with exhaustion, her spirit silent as always after a mission. But this time as they returned, Morrison stepped before her, saluted with a precision that broke protocol, a commander saluting a sergeant. Respect, not for rank, but for what she had done. The base erupted in applause. And for the first time since the explosion, Sophia felt she belonged again. The Montana sky stretched endless once more, painted with streaks of crimson and gold as the day surrendered to the mountains. Sophia stood on the porch of a new facility built beside the old ranch. The land where her childhood had been shaped by storms and silence now held a different purpose. The building had risen from her military savings and the support of a veterans group who believed in her vision. On the range below, 8 students prepared for their final exercise. They were veterans like her, each carrying wounds no one else could see. There was Marcus the Marine, who had not slept through a night since Fallujah, Sarah the medic, whose body jumped at every sudden noise, David the corpseman, whose hand shook whenever he tried to hold a cup. They had been told by doctors to let go of the past, to move on as if memory could be abandoned like a uniform. Sophia knew better, she had learned, that the way forward was not in forgetting, but in reshaping what haunted you into something that could heal. She called to them as they settled into position, her voice calm and steady, reminding them that this exercise was not about hitting the target. It was about finding the place inside where the noise faded, where focus and breath carried them beyond the chaos. The rifles cracked one after another. Marcus lined his shot at 600 yards, his breathing steady for the first time in years. When his bullet tore the center ring, Sophia asked him how he felt. His answer was a single word: quiet, and it carried the weight of healing that had eluded him for 3 long years. Sophia smiled, remembering her own broken nights in the sterile rooms of Walter Reed. The tears shed when she believed her life as a soldier was finished. She thought of the minefield she had crawled across, the impossible distances she had overcome, the sound of applause when a commander saluted her in front of an entire base. She thought of Emma, whose fragile breaths had first taught her the meaning of responsibility, every moment woven into the path that had led her here. Her phone buzzed, a message from David Morrison, the commander who once doubted her and later saluted her. His words simple yet heavy with respect. He had seen the piece about her program on national television. He wrote that she was saving more lives now than she ever had with a rifle. Sophia slipped the phone back in her pocket and returned to her students, her steps quiet on the grass, her eyes sharp as she corrected a stance here, offered a whisper of encouragement there. The media attention had surprised her. The story of the female sniper who had earned the salute of a SEAL commander captured imaginations far from the battlefield. But Sophia had learned to use that attention. She spoke openly about the weight carried by veterans, about the silent war of despair that claimed lives long after the guns had gone quiet. Her program was no longer only about shooting. It was about teaching focus, stillness, and control. It was about giving warriors back their peace. As the sun dipped lower, she gathered the group for a debrief. Her voice carried over the quiet range as she told them they had come here broken, But broken did not mean worthless. Sometimes the cracks in us were the very places where the light could enter. Her words hung in the cooling air, carried by silence and nods of understanding. David raised his hand, his tremor now nearly gone. He asked what came next for them after they left this place. Sophia looked at each face, scarred yet no longer defeated. She told them to return home and remember that impossible was only another word for untested, that they must take what they had learned and offer it to someone else who needed it. Because that was what warriors did. They protected each other. The group began to pack their gear, voices low but lighter than when they had first arrived. Sophia remained a moment longer, standing on the line, watching the stars emerge one by one in the vast Montana sky. She thought of those still out there fighting battles unseen, carrying burdens in silence. She knew tomorrow others would come, and she would be ready to guide them back into the light. The shadow had once been her call sign, whispered in fear by enemies who hunted her, feared by men who placed bounties on her head. Now it had become something different, something stronger. She was no longer simply a sniper defined by impossible shots. She was a mentor, a teacher, a source of hope, and in that hope lay a power greater than any rifle she had ever held. As the night closed around her and the ranch settled into quiet, Sophia breathed deeply, her chest rising against the cool air, her hands steady, her spirit calm. The long journey from the frozen morning when she faced a starving bear to this moment of guiding others had forged her into something more than a soldier. She had become a light for the broken, a keeper of resilience, a living reminder that even shattered lives could be rebuilt into strength. The Montana stars watched over her as she turned back toward the house, her footsteps echoing softly on the porch. Tomorrow would bring new stories, new burdens, new warriors searching for peace, and she would be waiting, steady as ever, the shadow no longer an omen of death, but a beacon of survival, of courage, and of hope.